Okay, let's dive into this because today we are looking at what is undeniably a massive structural and theological watershed moment in biblical history. We're talking about Genesis 49. This isn't just a touching, tearful family goodbye. This is the exact moment an ancient patriarch gathers his 12 sons and literally sets the trajectory for an entire nation. Our explainer today is completely grounded in Marc Bates's exegetical commentary on this chapter. And what Bates does so brilliantly is he takes what might just look like a simple, ancient deathbed scene and he transforms it into a seriously gripping narrative. Yes, it's a story of succession, for sure, but more importantly, it's the unveiling of this cosmic promise plan that stretches way beyond that one little room in Egypt. Here is our roadmap for unpacking all of this today. We'll start with the last day's assembly, look at the fallen firstborns, examine Judah's royal scepter, explore Joseph and the rest of the tribes, and finally, we'll reveal the cosmic promise plan. All right, part 1, the last day's assembly. When Jacob summons his sons here, it is not about paternal preference or just handing out family heirlooms. This is a formal, binding, covenantal assembly. Let's move to and see how this builds across biblical history. Bates uses Walter C. Kaiser Jr.'s framework to show us exactly what's happening. Think of it like a funnel opening up. The covenant promise originally focused on just a single patriarchal line, right? Abraham, then Isaac, then Jacob. But here, in this assembly, that promise explodes outward into a 12-tribal confederacy that's going to form the whole nation of Israel, ultimately pointing all the way to the Messianic era. And the real key to understanding all of this is sitting right at the beginning of the text with this crucial Hebrew phrase, bi'ahadet hayamim. That translates to in the last days or in days to come. So we're not talking about next week or next year. This specific time frame totally elevates the entire poem. It sets an interpretive horizon that stretches all the way toward ultimate, spirit-inspired messianic fulfillment. Which brings us to section 2, the fallen firstborns. In the ancient world, biology was basically destiny. The firstborn got the power, the money, the leadership, the whole shebang. But here we get a massive, dramatic twist where that expected order is completely thrown out the window. So Jacob is going down the line by birth order, starting with Leah's kids. Reuben is the biological firstborn. He theoretically holds the natural rights. But Jacob literally calls him unstable as water because Reuben defiled his father's couch. Just like that, his rights are completely stripped. Next up are Simeon and Levi, but they're lumped together because of their absolutely ruthless violence against Shechem. Jacob calls their weapons instruments of cruelty and issues a divine verdict to scatter them. Their ethical failures literally cost them their natural rights to lead. So why does this matter to us? Well, it sets up a massive ethical requirement. To stand within God's promise plan, you need deep ethical integrity. It's not just some biological birthright you get by default. Natural birth order is officially taking a backseat to Yahweh's sovereign choice and moral righteousness. Moving on to section 3, Judah's royal scepter. With the top 3 brothers officially disqualified, the spotlight shifts to the climax of the narrative, where a younger brother, Judah, steps up and gets the ultimate royal blessing. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the specific text of Genesis 49, verse 10. This is the messianic climax of the entire Pentateuch. Jacob declares, "The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until Shiloh comes." That is a rock-solid promise of an unbroken royal lineage flowing directly through Judah's descendants. But wait, who or what is Shiloh? Well, scholars have debated the exact nuance of this term for centuries, but it's broadly understood as a personal messianic title for a coming ruler. And look at what happens when this ruler arrives. To him shall be the obedience of the peoples, meaning universal Gentile submission. This coming sovereign judge aligns perfectly with that original mandate given to Abraham to bring divine blessing to all the families of the earth. All right, section 4, Joseph and the tribes. Here, Jacob transitions to the rest of the family, mapping out Joseph's material abundance and the geographic destinies of the brothers who will make up the nation. It's super fascinating how Jacob formally splits the primary blessings between 2 brothers here. Judah, as we just talked about, takes the royal primacy, the scepter, and the messianic line. But Joseph gets the physical double portion, known as the Bakora. So Joseph receives this massive territorial inheritance that eventually gets split between his 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. The leadership and the land are officially divided. Jacob then rapid fires through the destinies of the remaining sons, perfectly predicting their future geography and character. Zebulun, a maritime haven for ships. Issachar, he chooses agricultural tranquility. Dan is going to strike like a viper by the path, while Gad will be out raiding military attackers. Asher gets to enjoy rich, royal food, and Naphtali is described as a free-running doe yielding beautiful words. These aren't just random fortunes, guys. This is divine providence actively shaping their unique historical struggles within the unified nation of Israel. But when Jacob circles back to Joseph, the poetry just expands. He calls Joseph a fruitful bough. Now, we know Joseph faced bitter, hostile attacks from archers his whole life. Yet, as Jacob points out, Joseph's bow remained steady. Why? Because of covenant fidelity. His endurance was entirely due to the protection of the Avir Yaakov, the mighty one of Jacob. It is God's power preserving the promise plan. Which brings us to our final section, the cosmic promise plan. Let's synthesize how these ancient historical promises from a dying patriarch act as the ultimate bridge between the Old and New Testaments. As chapter 49 wraps up, Jacob gives a very explicit command. Do not bury me in Egypt. Bury me in the cave of Machpelah. This final act is just a profound demonstration of his unwavering faith in the Eretz Yisrael, that territorial guarantee of the Abrahamic covenant. And when the text says he was gathered to his people, it reflects this beautiful Old Testament idea of looking beyond the grave and joining the covenantal community in the afterlife. By refusing a permanent grave in Egypt, he literally anchored his descendants to the promised land. And this brilliantly illustrates the progressive unity of the Bible. I mean, look at how New Testament writers directly appropriated Jacob's exact imagery to describe Jesus Christ. Jacob calls Judah a lion's whelp. Revelation calls Jesus the lion of the tribe of Judah. Jacob says the scepter won't depart. Luke says Jesus receives the throne of his father David. Jacob talks about hitching a donkey to a choice vine. Jesus literally declares, I am the true vine. And that obedience of the peoples we talked about, Paul points right to the Messiah's reign over the Gentiles in Romans. The connections are just seamless. So, bringing this all home, what's the core takeaway from our explainer today? The big theological synthesis from Bates is that Genesis 49 totally rejects supersessionism. It holds together the concrete historical reality of ethnic Israel with the massive cosmic scope of salvation. The specific history of Israel wasn't just an end in itself, it was the intended vehicle to bring forth the Davidic Messiah. And through this coming king, the curse of Genesis 3 is finally undone and the blessing of Eden is restored to all creation. It's absolutely amazing how one single chapter can cover so much ground. Which leaves us with this final thought to chew on. How exactly does a dying father's blessing for a single family become a blueprint for cosmic restoration? When you start tracing the threads from Genesis 49, you see a divine promise plan that simply cannot be broken. Keep exploring this text, you guys. There is always more beneath the surface.